Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on gamification, not more than just a game. My name's Prue Lawrence and I'm the Managing Director of Qt Australia, and I also have John McLaughlin, who is the Commercial Director for Qt Australia and Singapore, who's also on the webinar, and I will be handing over to him at some point later on. At some point, I do know at what point that is, and I will be handing over to him. He'll take over some of the presenting. We are really excited that we have had so much interest in this webinar and excited that we've got lots of people on the line here. I'll just go through a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I want to make sure that everyone can hear us. So you should have on the right-hand side a little webinar panel where you can have a look to make sure that you've selected the right audio. So make sure you've selected both telephone, mic and speakers. That's so you can hear it over the internet. If you can't hear that, make sure you click on the settings button next to mic and speakers just to make sure that your volume is turned up and not muted. If you still can't hear, select the telephone radio button and there should be a number that comes up that you can dial into. Failing all of that, if you still can't hear, there's a question or a chat function box. Please let me know and send me a question via that so I can make sure that you can hear us. We have lots of people on the line, so everyone will be muted throughout the webinar to reduce background noise. And before we begin as well, we are recording this webinar. So if you have colleagues that you think will be interested in the webinar, we'll be making the link to this recording available early next week. Now, this webinar, though, is not all about us, and we want it to be about you as well. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the chat or the questions function on the webinar panel there to send us some questions. At the end, there will be time for John and I to answer your questions as well, because we definitely want to hear from you and hear your opinions. Throughout the webinar, there will also be a couple of polls. So we'll be running those, and we'd love to hear from you on what you think about gamification. So just a quick introduction of who are Qt. Some of you probably have already seen Qt, and this year Solutions merged with Qt to become Solutions Qt Australia, which is quite the mouthful, absolutely. Qt are a global provider of online psychometric and competency assessment systems. So we have a full suite of personality, cognitive assessments, technical knowledge assessments and skills tests, as well as an integrated platform with a video interviewing system. So globally, we have 24 offices around the world. We assess over 4 million candidates a year. Our tests are available in 40 languages, and we are present in 70 countries. So what Solutions Qt Australia do in Australia is we combine both the technology and the products with professional services, which forms Solutions Qt Australia. Okay, now let's get on to the first poll. So bear with me while I launch the poll here. I will bring it up and get you guys to show us what you know about gamification. So I'll give you a few seconds there to fill in about what is gamification. Is it using customer loyalty card to get to your fifth coffee free? Is it the sales target leaderboard at work? Is it getting 10 likes for your recent status? So we'll just leave it for a couple of seconds there and have everyone participate. And when I close the poll, I'll share the results with everyone. All right, looks like everyone has filled it out there. Thank you for doing that. I will now close the poll and I will share the results. So there we go. 53% said all of the above. And yes, well, you're all right in the sense that, yes, using a customer loyalty card, the sales target leaderboard, and getting 10 likes for your recent Facebook status are all elements of gamification. So all of you are right, which is great. It's always a positive way to start off the presentation. Thank you for participating with that. All right, let's go back to the webinar then. So let's actually get into it then and have a look at what is gamification. And so we've used this definition from Gartner from 2011, that gamification is the use of game elements and game design in non-game contexts. And I think that's the key there, that it's the game elements in non-gaming contexts. So how does this actually work? So gamification works by making technology more engaging, and it encourages users to engage in desired behaviours, taking advantage of our psychological predisposition to engage in gaming. So what is that predisposition? Well, it's all about psychological constructs of motivation, ability and triggering. So what does that mean? Well, it's motivation being the desire to engage and the willingness to participate in activities. Ability is the capacity to participate in those activities, and then the triggers are the stimulus that initiate a reaction. Now that actually sounds all very psyche. So what it really says is that gamification is an interactive online design that plays on people's competitive instincts and incorporates use of reward to drive action. So there's that motivation and there's that ability and the triggering. So these rewards drive action, and they include things like virtual rewards such as points or badges or discounts or free gifts. And then they have status indicators such as friend counts or leaderboards or retweets. So it all captures our innate predisposition to engage with technology, to be rewarded for that engagement, and to then be triggered or motivated to move forward with that engagement. Now, some people have dismissed gamification as a fad, but neuroscientists are actually discovering more and more about the ways in which humans react to interactive design elements, such as the ones I've just described. They actually have found that these elements of reward and engagement and triggering can all have feel-good chemical reactions. So they actually alter our responses to the stimuli. They make us feel good. They can therefore increase our reaction times, for instance, and then from that they can be used to improve learning, improve participation, and improve motivation overall. And as you can see there, that gamification, or the use of game elements to promote desired behaviours among customers, has been a popular business strategy for decades. And here are some of the examples, a bit like what we saw in the poll about a customer loyalty card, employee of the month scheme, which is like a leaderboard, and hidden tokens. These are rewards. So these are all game elements that have been used for decades. And what they're seeing now is with the advent of technology, we can put them online and they are more widely accessible to a wider audience. Overall though, neuroscientists are finding game elements make people feel good. So, what are the key elements of gamification? Because what we want to do now is break down those key elements of gamification to really understand what it is that we're talking about. The first key element is engaging. So the gamification leverages a person's natural desire for competition, for achievement, status, and self-expression. Let's actually illustrate this with an example, and maybe one that a lot of us, either who are parents or who have been children before, who can relate to this. So an example of that could be encouraging kids to do chores, making a task such as cleaning the bathroom, which is ultimately not a rewarding task, making that into a game and making that fun is a good way to gain higher engagement and instill a sense of fun and therefore commitment to the task. The second element of gamification is around reward and recognition. So this is the use of leaderboards. So you know where you stand in relation to your peers, be that in an online gaming forum or even, like we saw in the poll, on a sales target leaderboard at work. And then also an element of gamification is the reward and recognition, the badges, the evidence of accomplishments. So if you indulge me slightly further for the example of the children doing chores, I know that when we were young, we had the leaderboard, if you like, on the fridge, and every time we completed a chore, we would get a gold star. And then once a certain amount of gold stars were achieved, there was a prize or there was some further reward at the end. So these gaming elements have been around for a long time and are very simple when you break them down into each of the different aspects of gamification. In doing research for this webinar, I had a look at a study by Deloitte who cited gamification as one of its top 10 technology trends for 2012. And they said that serious gaming simulations and game mechanics such as leaderboards, achievements and skill-based learning are becoming embedded in day-to-day business processes. They're driving adoption, performance and engagement. So it really is showing that there's this great advent of gaming elements and game mechanics to engage, reward, train, market and educate people. Another element of gamification is feedback. And feedback is one of our human drivers and needs. We want to know how are we going. And the good gamification systems or programs give immediate feedback or responses to action. So for example, they congratulate a user on reaching a goal and encourage the next step to the milestone. In a game situation, that may be moving through levels of a game, gaining a number of lives in a online gaming situation. Other examples of feedback can be text messages or emails congratulating a user for reaching a goal. Positive feedback like gold stars, like I mentioned in the example of getting kids to do their chores. So it's all about making the user, the person who's engaging in gamification, feel good about what they are doing and feel good about achieving their skill and mastering the task. And finally, another element of gamification is community, and that provides the context for achievement. Through social media and online communities, this is really promoting the use of gamification element of community, that people can share their experiences, give meaning to the goals and badges that they have earned. And it creates energy in the community as well, that they're aware of what people are doing. And then people share that through social media, and they share that through online communities. So we see that a primary driver is the rapid uptake of social networks. In this Deloitte study that I looked at, it said now used by over 70% of internet users, and reward and status and therefore a sense of community are embedded in people's interactions with online communities. So game elements and competition are interspersed throughout platforms that have made social networks like Facebook and Twitter popular. So it's really interesting, I think, to have a look when you break down the elements of gamification to see how we have been using those elements for decades and for years to engage with employees, engage with customers, engage with our children. And now that it's wrapped up in an element of gamification, sometimes people can get lost in what is gamification. So hopefully now we have broken down what the key elements of gamification are. So what then does gamification achieve? If we know what these elements are, what does it achieve? Well, we have a look first of all for internal customers, if you like, or employees in an organisation. So gamification elements such as feedback or reward and recognition, leaderboards, can lead to an increase in information sharing. If it becomes part of the culture that employees are encouraged to provide informal and frequent feedback, either face-to-face or through enterprise social network features, even saying things like thank you and you did a good job, and rewarding people for their behaviour can help increase information sharing and help increase collaboration, and particularly cross-team collaboration as well. So the game mechanics and feedback loops and rewards all spur interaction, they boost engagement, they boost buy-in, loyalty, fun and learning, and therefore cross-team collaboration. And what does gamification achieve from an external customer point of view? And this is probably the one that we know the most about. Combined with loyalty programs, gamification can provide recognition, rewards, and increased repeat behaviour, and therefore lengthen customer engagement and retention. So gamification elements leads to increased customer participation with a brand. They start identifying with the brand, they start engaging more with the brand, and that leads to longer purchase cycles in the sense of that they will remain engaged and purchase from that brand for a longer time. Okay, so let's actually have a look now at an example of a game, one that we've prepared earlier. So I've just hand over to John there, who will talk you through an example.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Prue. That was great. Thanks for the in-depth introduction to gamification and the overall concept and the underlying constructs. I get the slightly more fun of showing you one of our more gamey assessments live now. So what you see on your screen right now is our Christmas assessment. So it tests whether or not you're ready for the Christmas season and whether or not you're ready to brace the snowstorms that might be coming your way. Might not be that appropriate for Australia in terms of the snow, but in any case, this assessment actually really highlights some of the underlying constructs that Prue was talking about in relation to engagement, in relation to feedback, rewards, as well as actually community. So I'll just show you how it works. So you just click on Let's Go. We also send you through, or we will send you through the link to this assessment so you can try it out later yourself and see how ready you are for Christmas. So I'll just click here on Let's Go. This will bring up the test now in a second. So here we are. So the key, or the task here is to see how many, or you have to count the snowflakes in the screen. So right now we have 5. You need to identify the number, select the right option, and then depending on whether or not you selected the right option or the wrong option, the screen will flash either in green or in red. Now that's already one element of gamification applied in a live setting, so in an assessment setting. So the fact that we're providing instantaneous feedback as to whether or not you got the question right or wrong already makes the process more engaging. So I just show you what it would be like if I got it wrong. So we'll see here we have 2. So we'll say 2. It will flash up as red. I go with 2 again. It will flash up as red. So then if I click 6, it will flash up as green. So you can see it's the other element here that you see at work is it's highly engaging. It's interactive, it's fun, and it's actually a very short assessment. The assessment itself, when you go past the example sections, you go into the actual test. It's a 2-minute test. So at no point, it's so short that you'll actually, the task remains new. So if I click on next here, the next piece of gamification is, I click on cancel, it just brings us back to the leaderboard. So actually all your scores are recorded, and this is then the element of rewards. You're placed on the leaderboard and you can see how you did in comparison to other people. Now this again is reinforced through the sense of community. Now I'm actually very aware who Mike H is. Mike H is one of my Irish colleagues, and in the sense of the community, it's actually this game created a side effect in our organization, and all of our colleagues actually try to aim for the high score and to create this competitive element in our organization now. And we're all very jealous of Mike's score and would try to beat it if we could. However, it's just that high that it becomes actually quite difficult. So we will send you through a link to that assessment later on, and I will just go back to the presentation now and talk about, just bring it up here, and I'll just go make it large. So, apologies, I'll just go out. So, why should we use gamification in graduate recruitment to begin with? Well, in a nutshell, gamification and the underlying constructs allow you to create a more interactive and engaging process that, well, candidates enjoy and that delivers tangible results to you, the HR practitioners. So far, so good. But I suppose the key questions then around gamification come around validity. So can we use these concepts of feedback, engagement, reward, and community in a very valid way? Because in the end of the day, that is what it all comes down to for us as HR practitioners, designing selection and assessment processes. Can we design and implement valid and reliable processes? So can we introduce these concepts into our existing processes without lowering the validity of our current process? That actually brings us to our second poll, which Prue will facilitate again.
Okay, so you should see the second poll there now. Do you currently use gamification? So please spend a couple of seconds. Yes, we have game elements gamification for selection. No, but we're considering using game elements or gamification, or no, gamification is not for us. Okay, so we've got some voting going on there. Give you a couple more seconds. All right, I'll close the poll now and share the results. So here we go. We can see that overwhelmingly 77% of you said no, you're not currently using gamification, but you are considering using game elements or gamification. 8% are currently using game elements, and 15% say no, gamification is not for us. For those who gamification is not for you, thank you for being part of the webinar though, because it shows that you are open to what is happening in the market. All right, John, I will hide those results and I will hand back over to you now.
Okay, apologies. Okay, so my screen is back on. Right, so then, so I suppose then the big question is, so how can we apply gaming concepts to to existing processes. I suppose that brings us back to the definition of gaming. So applying gaming concepts to a non-game setting. So in our case, the setting that we're looking at right now would be graduate selection and assessment. So we can use concepts here such as feedback, rewards, engagement, and community to amplify and enhance our current processes, and we can actually do so without lowering the validity of the tools used and the reliability of the process overall. So I suppose, we take the game out of gamification is the sentence here. So how do we do that? Well, there are different options and tools available that are both highly valid as well as reliable. So some can be used in a pre-application stage, which I will talk about now, and some can be used in a post-application stage, which I will touch upon later. So for example, one of the tools that could be used is a realistic job preview, a RJP. So it is a tool that uses concepts of gamification in order to enhance the candidate experience and add value to the recruitment process. So an RJP is completed before a candidate actually applies. It is a bespoke tool, thus designed for individual organizations and particular roles, and the underlying idea behind an RJP is that it confronts prospective candidates with both the positive as well as the negative aspects of a role. So an RJP, or the aspects itself, are presented as short scenarios, and candidates need to select how they would react to any given scenario based on 3 answer options. So you see that here on your screen actually. So this is one of our EasyJet examples, one of the European airlines that we work with. So they have an RJP sitting at the front of the application process. So you need to complete that before you can actually go on to apply for the role of cabin crew in this particular case. So the scenario is you have been working on a flight to Hamburg and are just about to start preparations for the return flight home when your cabin manager tells you that there is a technical issue with the aircraft. That means you'll be delayed in Hamburg for at least 5 hours. This will disrupt the plans you had made to spend the evening out for a friend's birthday. How do you feel? Now, there's 3 answer options here. A is I understand the reasons, but I feel a little frustrated. B is I'm resolved to do my best to help make the situation better. And C is I accept that sometimes things like this happen. So the test itself provides immediate feedback on each question, explaining the reasoning behind the correct or desired answer. So you see that here in the orange speech bubble. So here, we select the case would be B. So it reads, this type of unexpected challenge happens sometimes, affecting all members of the team. Think about how you would respond in such a situation. Being proactive and trying to improve the situation for the whole team, showing individual flexibility at the same time is likely to help you make the best of it. Then as you complete or as you go through the RJP, depending on how you answer all the different questions, at the very end we provide a recommendation to the candidate as well as to whether they are suited for the role or should consider their options more thoroughly. So it really acts as, in the end, it really acts as a pre-application filter, and that only candidates that would suit the role and that are aware of its challenges go on to apply. Just to give you an idea as well, it is validated as such as well. So it is validated against your existing workforce and pre-identified key business metrics that could include something like tenure or performance, depending on the ultimate requirements. So actually here you see what the result actually looks like. So it seems as though your personal preferences and motivations are well aligned with the EasyJet cabin crew role. Think again about the feedback offered to you in the quiz before committing to make your application, and then either you can exit the assessment or you can continue to the application stage straight away. So that's the RJP. Another system that we have sitting in front of the application stage is what we're currently running with Siemens in Germany, hence the slightly Germanized slide that you see in front of you. The Siemens Job Navigator is, well, it's called the Siemens Jonah system, but it's a job navigator really, and at its core it matches a prospective candidate against all available graduate and apprenticeship positions across Siemens. Now, what's important to understand is that Siemens has 100 plus different graduate roles and apprenticeship roles available on a year by year. So there's actually quite a lot of choice. So how do we go about the matching? Well, it's based on a suite of different assessments. That includes an interests and affinities questionnaire as well as several interactive aptitude tests, which when completed, return match scores for the different roles available and really tell you, which roles you're highly suited for, which roles you're not really suited for, etc. So the assessment in itself are short, engaging, similar to the one I showed you. They provide immediate feedback and further rewards based on your performance. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. So ultimately what this type of tool does, it increases role fit. And just to give you an idea in terms of the actual business outcome it had on Siemens, it increased the completion rate for Siemens in terms of apprenticeships and grad programs from 78% to an astonishing, really, 95%. Now, you might say that's only 17%, but because Siemens hires actually so many people in Germany, that equates directly to savings in terms of training costs and development costs of about 4.2 million euros a year. So it's quite significant. I suppose the next question to answer now is, how does it relate to gamification? So how does it apply to the RJQ and the Job Navigator? Well, at the design stage for both, we indeed use key concepts of gamification to enhance the workings of these tools. So they are, at one point, they are engaging. So they are short assessments, fully branded and company specific, that allow a prospective candidate to interact with your organization in a way that, well, a simple video or your careers website could not facilitate in the same way. And in particularly the case from Siemens to do so or engage candidates and potential talent at a very, very early age. The interesting piece here is that the Siemens Job Navigator is used by candidates as young as 13, trying to decide what to do with the future, and Siemens actually promotes it actively in secondary schools. So that's that part around engagement. And in terms of feedback, the RJP, as mentioned, or as shown actually, provides instantaneous feedback on your response and outlines the key reason for the desired response. So it really highlights, so why should you be a certain, or why should you have a certain attitude towards the job, what are the key challenges, etc. And it explains that in more detail. The Job Navigator, on the other hand, provides you, gives you an idea of your score for each aptitude assessment completed in the form of actual stars. So similar to what Prue mentioned earlier around the tours, you get 1 star for an average performance, 2 stars for very good performance, 3 stars for very, very good performance, etc. So thus it provides an awareness for candidates of where their strength areas are, as well as where some development areas are, as well as in addition to as well as it also provides, of course, the instantaneous feedback within the assessments itself. So the last part about the gamification elements that underpin the assessments would be the rewards. Of course, it is the assessments itself are rewarding and clearly state, in the end, whether or not you're a good fit for the role, or in the case of the Job Navigator, which roles you should be applying to. So that brings us to the next part, which would be using gamification elements in the post-application stage. So that could be in the form of a situational judgment questionnaire, an SJQ. So an SJQ is completed post-application as part of the selection process. It presents a candidate with everyday work scenarios that they might come across and presents 3 different ways of responding. So actually, let's take a closer look at the example that we have here. So this is from Harvey's furniture store. The scenario here is it is a quiet day and there have been no customers coming into the store in the last 30 minutes. What would you do? So you're presented with 3 different options and you have 6 points to distribute to determine your preference across the three. So option number 1 is practice some sales techniques and carry out role plays with a colleague. Option 2 is see if you can move the products in the store around to make it look more attractive to customers. And 3 is get your colleagues together to analyze why people may not be coming in the store and come up with ideas on how you might market the store locally. So the key to an SJQ is that all 3 answer options in itself are viable, but only one of them is representative of the way your organization in the end would react, and it is validated as such as well. So what that means is that it is validated against your top performers and against key business metrics, and thus may predict things such as performance as well as organizational fit. To put that into more context, and more of a graduate context as well, I apologize. So Bank of Ireland actually introduced an SJQ in this year actually, after reviewing their current graduate challenges. So the reason for them introducing an SJQ was that they wanted to introduce a bespoke behavioral tool that addressed 2 key challenges they faced. So one was they wanted to educate candidates about the roles and the organization they are applying to, so Bank of Ireland in that case, and 2, they wanted to introduce a behavioral screening tool that improved the quality of candidates that make it to the final stage, so the assessment stage of the process, the assessment center stage of the process. So the SJQ looked and felt like as follows, so very similar to the other one, but the scenario here differs. So it's you have finished your tasks for the day and your manager has been called away unexpectedly for the afternoon. Do you A, take this time to review the various online manuals and procedures for learning and development, B, approach other members of the team to see if they need assistance, and C, email your manager to see if she has any more work for you. Similar to before, you allocate the 6 points across the 3 different statements to determine preference. So the SJQ was actually validated against Bank of Ireland's existing talent pool of graduates, so the people they had hired the year before, and their work performance. So they took the top performers and validated it as such against their performance appraisal data. So in the end, high scores on candidates that receive a high score on the SJQ, the high score would actually correlate highly with assessment center performance as well as job offers made. That brings us again to the question, so how do the gamification elements apply to a situational judgment questionnaire? So what are the elements that it uses? So I suppose as illustrated by the Bank of Ireland example, it is engaging as it acts as an interactive, branded and organization-specific assessment tool. And furthermore, it provides feedback to candidates in the form of insights into what it actually is like working for the organization in a particular role. So I think that were the core areas or the core things I wanted to cover today from my side. I mean, what we showed were just 3 ideas of how different gamification elements may be introduced into a selection process. Nevertheless, many of our more standard assessments also incorporate gaming concepts, similar to what you've seen in the Christmas test. So, but I think for today, this pretty much brings us to the end of what we wanted to present, and nearly to question time. Just to sort of summarize what we looked at today, we discussed the overall concept of gamification, and in the end it is the underlying elements of feedback, rewards, community, engagement that can apply to non-game settings to really amplify user experience. I suppose in our case that relates directly to recruitment and selection, where feedback, rewards and engagement as shown through different tools can play key parts to create a very interactive and engaging process that is both fun for the candidates to participate in, as well as that provides direct benefits, valid benefits to HR. So the tools we showed you, they were all bespoke, they're all very valid tools, and at the same time they're quite cost effective and an easy way to introduce gaming elements into process, into a selection process for you. So just to give you an idea of some of the organizations who use this already, so that includes EasyJet, Harvey, Siemens, Scoot Airlines, Fly Dubai, one of the universities here in Singapore, of course, Bank of Ireland, the case study I mentioned, Nuclear Grads. There are many, many more, and of course, listening to the experts, everybody agrees that by 2020, the use of gamification elements will only increase. So that is it from us. Please feel free to ask questions.
Yes. So we've got some time, a couple more minutes. Thank you, John. That was great. Time for some questions. We've actually had a couple of questions come through. You talked about validating an SJQ. Can you tell us a bit more about what that involves?
Yeah, of course. So usually from the very, very outset, you determine which the key business metrics are that you want to improve in the process. So it could be something like length of tenure, it could be performance, and then you validate an SJQ as such. So you take a sample group of top performers that perform well against that key business metric, and you identify the common answer trends to these work scenarios. So how are your ideal performers reacting to, or which of the three answer options do they choose? So which is predictive of a certain type of behavior, or the desired behavior, so to speak.
Great, that's good. And
yeah.
That's really good. That was actually a very simple way of describing it. Thank you. I was sitting here waiting for you to go into much more detail, but you've just succinctly covered it. We've got one question that I can answer, which is quite straightforward, and I apologise that we haven't defined it clearly enough. Someone has asked, can you tell me what RJP and SJQ stand for? So RJP is a realistic job preview. So like John talked about, what you would do pre-application to get an understanding of what the job might be like, the role might be like, and if you're a good fit for that. And an SJQ is a situational judgment questionnaire. So like John described, there are a number of different situations, 3 responses to that situation. All 3 are right responses or correct responses. There's just one response that is more right than others, as it's been validated against high performers in the organisation, as John has just described. A question for you, John, from the audience. Will off-the-shelf products produce the same outcomes as bespoke products?
So the interesting piece here is that it always comes down to if it's an off-the-shelf product and it's not validated within your organization, the outcomes will differ. A validated model always will provide a higher return, so to speak. So you can also, it's equally possible to validate our off-the-shelf products within your organization, within your process, and we do so for quite a number of different organizations where we identify, for example, which are the competencies that are indicative of success in a particular role. Yeah,
so I guess the answer there is yes, it will, but as long as there is some sort of bespoke element to the off-the-shelf products, being that they are validated within the organisation. Is that?
Yes, that's what I was trying to get at, yeah.
No problem. Okay, here's a good one. They're all good questions, of course. If you only had a small amount to spend on incorporating an element of gamification into your recruitment process, what would be a good first step, John?
I think depending on your challenge, of course, so is it something around the lines of EasyJet, who deal with 40,000 applications a month, so they needed a way to actually cut down on the numbers without them having to go through all the applications, so they needed a way to sort of for candidates to self-select out of the process, where the RJP made the most sense for them. an RJP is quite a cost-effective solution, because usually it's the way it works is that, because usually it deals with such high numbers that volume basis doesn't really apply. The SJQ and SJQ works similar to that as well. So I think especially the RJP and the SJQ are quite cost-effective solutions to use to introduce certain gaming elements into the process.
Yes, because of the breadth of candidates that they reach.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got time for one more question. What does the testing look like in the job navigator that you did for Siemens? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So the Siemens job navigator is actually, well, as I mentioned, it's quite interesting in the way that there's 100 different career paths in the end sitting behind it. So it could be a kitchen apprentice. So you could be working in one of the canteens, learning to become a chef, or it could be an apprentice engineer, or you could be going into one of the management graduate programs. So there's quite a variety of different options available to candidates. So it starts off with a bio section. So you asked about your background in terms of did you go to university, what did you study in university. So that sort of is the first filter that you go through. Then the next piece is a questionnaire on interests and affinities that really identifies which type of intelligences do you like to use. Do you like to work with your hands, etc. Whatever it might be. Do you like manual labor? Do you like to work outdoors? All these kind of things. And then we have a range of aptitude assessments, and the aptitude assessments are actually for certain roles actually quite important. So, for example, there's also a color blindness test, so it identifies whether or not you're colorblind and to what degree to a certain extent. So that's actually quite important for engineers, or you can imagine as well for it'd be quite important for things such as pilots as well. Of course, they can't be colorblind. Engineers in general can't be colorblind. So the other tests are then things such as numerical reasoning, logical reasoning, and verbal reasoning, and they're all weighted differently across the different roles. So at the very, very start, we actually performed basically a validation study across all 100 of those roles to weight the importances of the different interests and affinities as well as the different aptitudes for each role.
That's great. It sounds, particularly the colourblind one sounds really fascinating. There's one more I want you to answer, John, because I think it's very key. With regards to the RJP, are the results shared with the employer if the candidate continues with the process? Particularly, say, if they weren't a good fit for the role, but they still continued with the process. Does the employer know that?
So that's determined on a client-by-client basis. Some companies ask for that information, and some companies don't. So it really comes down to also how you communicate it to the candidate. Do you say from the outset, this is an assessment solely for you, or this is actually part of the assessment process? For EasyJet, it actually sits in front of it, so it doesn't affect the part afterwards. They have an SJQ, for example. EasyJet have an SJQ then as well that cabin crew completes afterwards.
Yeah, it's a good question as well, and interesting that it is about the organisation determines what you do with that information. So I'm conscious of the time now. It's now 10 to the hour here, and we must wrap up. I want to thank everyone for their participation. We will be releasing the recording of this webinar and sending that out to you, and for those who weren't able to attend. And we'll also be sending you a link to our Christmas game to see if you can beat Mike H on the leaderboard, because obviously none of us can in Qt, so let's see if someone outside of Qt can do that. Thank you so much for attending. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. Thanks, John, for presenting, and we'll see you all next year.
Thank you.